Well, hello there, everyone. You have right here talk about for higher education, and basically about for any questions that more likely that somebody may ask us, or like we may have for that particular person. But on the other hand, that this right here talks about for higher education, and I know like with anybody knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that if you're going to be going back to school, just to be able to get a good job, that pays very well, and as well as like for anybody that may want to where if they're going to be doing and I know a lot of the questions more likely that would be coming around, especially as to where that after they completed about maybe 1 or 2 years of college education, and then they're trying to look for work, especially. But this right here would be a picture right here, example right here of me when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and of course the only job that more likely that I guess I more likely had for during this time I guess was keeping my room clean as well as maybe cleaning up after myself. I guess that cleaning up like that and I know like with anybody is to where that the thing is about the jobs the jobs that more likely that you have since you were about 2 or 3 and one of those could be as to where that if I get into my toys and dump them on the floor, or maybe make a mess in my bedroom, you'll get toys all scattered all over the place, and the more likely he's knowing about, well, then it's time to clean up. I can, well, clean up what? Like, so it's like really that whenever we think about it, is to where that yeah that from whenever we decide to go like for go back to school for a higher education, and I know like with anybody's to where that they weren't, or I guess the top main question would be as to where yeah, if you want to go back to school for a higher education, that the questions remain as to where why and where, and then what do you want to major in. So I know that like with anybody though, if they were to be what you call getting serious about college though, that they weren't, to where that yeah that you have right here is like this right here will be right here is a crayon drawing right here of me right here, and I were to be what you call holding a paper, like holding a booklet, and then anybody that may want to where yeah that you know this right here is a crayon drawing. So while I was drawing it, this right here is in crayon, this right here is a little bit with pen, but I was include right here is a picture sketch right here of a brain. And I know like with anybody that especially is to where that yeah like for like the type brain is that really I'm like do a lot of students so they go back to school mainly to be able to help improve their education. I'm like really that yeah, if the question more likely goes by is toward it, really, I'm like, if you're just going back to school just because that somebody recommended it, to check out what they teach, or it could be all the above too. But on the other hand, that yeah, a lot of people will more likely say that, are you worried about how expensive it is? Like, yeah, but then on the other hand, that really that people may say is to where, are you worried about how hard it is? But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, yeah. But then really, I'm like, what's one thing that we may have missed about the whole purpose about college education? One of those could be as to where, you know, a lot of the website securities, and as well as knowing about who manages the account while the person's going to school, especially. So you're like Warren to where that whenever you do go back to school, that you expect less paperwork. So whenever you're starting at the time, it just seems like to where that you would think is to where it's all about knowing your class hours, and whenever you have to when you have to arrive for class and then have your books ready and all that stuff. So we're like thinking about is to where that yeah that having class hours, I guess you can say, is to where it's almost like having a job, is to where yeah you just sometimes you just can't just you can't just what you call go in the class, and really I'm like anybody like Warren Tour, really we may say it all depends on what goes on, but really I was going to say is to where that you go into school and just stare at a book or whatever. But on the other hand, that you see right here is I went into right here's an example right here of a brain, and according to my definition for like higher education, that basically means is to where that yeah that you are paying, I guess you're paying, like I say, it's like an agreement, for the school, though, is to where you're paying a lot of money, for, like at first, though, whenever you're first getting started, you're talking about a lot of money, where we're talking about, more than $5,000 or so it cost. And I know during this time, of course, that with that amount of money, I could probably say is that, yeah, that with that amount of money, that during that time, back in like 1989, I'm like five or maybe 7,000 or maybe $8,000. I can maybe use $8,000 as an example. With about $8,000, that yeah, they think about us to where they with that kind of money, that maybe you can get yourself like what you call, yeah, that a number of things, but really that, for like maybe 2 or 3 would more like to have. And one of those would be like maybe their own playground set or anything like that. But really that maybe backyard play set or something like that. But on the other hand, that like say for like questions asked, it's like for anything, why we ask questions. And I know that one thing I did want to mention about is to where that, why people would ask questions whenever they already know the answers to them, or it's like if it goes by as to where why ask questions whenever, like, you don't need to know the answers to them. So it's like if you're that curious, huh? But on the other hand, that you have right here, as an example right here of me, and let's just say that yeah, that whenever you're going to be going to school, and a lot of times it's like one to where yeah, you go for a higher education and you pretty much are paying for these classes, for higher education. We may see how important it is maybe in the near future. So a lot of times, I know I mentioned this before, is to where it's about the future. But on the other hand, it seems like that probably there's a difference between, I guess, for what you got to do and then for what you went to school for. So you're like one to where that, yeah, that especially that if it shows up on your resume about the previous years of education, that that yeah, that that you were out for 10 years during this time, and then whenever you went back, but then knowing about the for whatever courses that they really recommend you to have and you to be trained for. And so that's just another thing about higher education, that since I was in kindergarten, I can more likely say is to where that yeah, since I was about 8 years old, that I've been talking about, you know, going to college and then going to get education, maybe because it's somebody else in the family that already has their college degree, that already has their college education. So you kind of want to be like them, to where you want to go ahead and aim for the best. You want to go ahead and aim for a higher education and think about as to where the things that you don't have that you like to have. So I guess really that I guess if that's the important matter, is to where if it's all about is to where the things that you would like to have that you don't have at the moment. So there may be a number of reasons to why kids may say is to where that they want to go to college, and my reason as well is to where to help improve, like saying, I know like with anybody that especially headaches, and I know with like any type of headaches that that could cause, like everybody say that if there's a lot of pressure going on, especially maybe in class or so, and at the time that really that whenever we do get headaches, headaches could maybe be caused by a number of reasons. And one of those could be like, if you want to call them like maybe pressure points, and as well as maybe for high anxiety or some sort. So if anybody wants to, or how can you get high anxiety just by staring at a book, or just by turning an assignment in, or just by trying to think about it, as to where that's something that just don't work. But on the other hand, that you see right here is that this right here will be a crayon sketch right here of me whenever I was young. Now, I would probably say I would have been about, it looks like I'm at least, maybe 10 or 11 years old in this picture. So I know like with anybody, it's like if you're going to be, especially if you're going to be in the 5th grade or maybe in the 6th grade, that you're like word to where that, yeah, that, the future of education, the future of education, that maybe not everything's paid for. And I know like with anybody is to where even if you were to do the math, that maybe not everything is going to be paid for. But think of something that is paid for. You're like Warren, to where you take the time at home to maybe come up with an idea for like, well, this is this is what you call, if you want to call it, I don't know, maybe it could be what you call it could be a dream if this is going to help improve the brain power. And like for what I call advanced brain power, but the type of advanced brain power I'm talking about is to where it's something that what you call improves the way that your brain thinks. So I know this right here would be an example right here of a heart, but anybody that may want to, where yeah, that I mainly drew right here is a demonstration right here of a brain. So this right here, like with the brain right here, along if this was an example right here of me and like just the way the brain works, and anybody that may want to, or yeah, well, ain't the spine supposed to be over here? I'm like, yeah, but while I was drawing this, I was mainly thinking about is to where go ahead and draw the brain there, and then go ahead and draw the eyes and the mouth, and if I want to go and just draw the rest of the body, but it was like, well, okay, well, like, never mind, well, but anyway, not everything's perfect, is it? So mainly that whenever we go back to school, that according to what I would say is about to help improve it, is the way to help it. It's to help improve my thinking as well as like for any students is that they think about college possibilities just because it's like to where that when they are thinking about their future, and then they're thinking about is to where that we're not going to say that we're done with school and we're not going to keep trying, we're not going to keep working hard. So there may be a number of reasons to why kids get serious about college even whenever they're 8 years old, or maybe whenever they're 10 years old. But just thinking about it is to where a number of things that they may be thinking about, that they may see in the near future, that maybe not everybody really understands. So it seems like to where that at the time, a lot of these questions that more likely remain. And a lot of those questions that we likely weren't, to where it seems very confusing for a lot of people. And especially with the especially the bills, as well as for like any student loan agreement or anything like that. So a lot of this stuff seems very confusing. What's one of those reasons why it seems very confusing? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. It's supposed to be about for the future. So whenever I think about this and thinking about it, as to where really anybody that may want to, where a type of disorder that's in the brain right here, the type of disorder that's in the brain, and necessarily thinking about is to where that just the way the brain works compared to everybody else, and knowing about how they learn and how they think. The whole purpose about higher education isn't all about the fact about that. Yeah, well, since you lost well, you're going to be losing some money, or I'm like, really, is this in a matter of winning or losing, or is this all about the fact about it's like getting even? Getting even between you and the school. So if anybody were warned where that yeah, if you want to fight against what you call is like your education, but knowing about really, I'm like, if this agreement is all about between like what you call is like the fighting, as well as with the winning or the losing, or knowing that the fact about you're willing to come up with a certain amount of payments just to show how well that you are willing to learn, how well you are willing to improve the source of education. I can say is to her that yeah, that I do work on help improving my own education, compared to people say is like, well, you can't do it. Well, you're not that smart. You're not that smart. But on the other hand, that whenever I think about this right here would be example right here of like if this was like maybe related to like health class, maybe biology class, any type of health class that I may have had maybe in the 5th grade. And I know that I didn't draw all that artistic detail into it because I kind of wanted to make it look like if it was from the back in the history years. So this would have been back in I would say back in 1992, something like that. So there's a lot of things that I don't have. So I apologize, but like yeah, there's a lot of drawings that I can remember doing a little bit of them from the 5th grade that I don't have. I don't have too much of it. It's like thinking about as to where that yeah, that anybody that may want to or like to see some examples. I don't have too much of it. But anyway, but this right here would be example right here of like with me though is like being class, and like with anybody is that whenever you're going to be in the 5th grade, I'm sure most of us can remember some parts say of the 5th grade. The first thing that I wanted to get into whenever I was in the 5th grade was band class. So if anybody wonders as to where that yeah, band class, I'm like, you get into band class, and just because a few people a few friends that you know at school that were in band class, but like which I thought that was pretty neat too, like band class. But on the other hand, other subjects that you had and knowing about, I'm like, really, that really, yep. Since I would probably say since I was in the 5th grade, I've been talking about a higher education. So anybody that may want toward it, yeah, that you know, during that time, during this time, that I probably did not know what $10,000 was. Really, I'm like, if I would have had that kind of money, do I think that I would have had to spend it on college? And anybody like wanted to where that really that if you were to find a pot of gold at the at the end of the rainbow, then more likely they'll like say that if we're talking about up to $10 million, then yeah, it's got to go to college and is going about. It's like if you want to open up your own business one day. But on the other hand, then I'm not going to try to make a joke about this any more than I have to, but other than the fact about with higher education, though, is knowing about really that with the source of higher education is that the question go by is to where that like with anybody that whenever we look at this picture right here and thinking necessarily to where that yeah that what I was thinking whenever I was in this like yeah I could have been watching TV or maybe talking and that maybe telling jokes or some kind. But on your hand, that whenever school, going back to school came around the corner, I'm like, I can remember that, yeah, that it was like, really, that, how many students that look forward to going back to school, and I'm sure there's maybe a couple of them that do because they want to, see their teachers and as well as their friends, their classmates, and as well as knowing the school a little bit. So I know that, like my parents told me, is to where that, for getting a good job is to where that they teach you how to be that person. And I can remember whenever I was in the 5th grade that I asked, it's like, well, why do I have to go to school? And I know, like with any kids, is to where that with school though, that just the way that they teach you, and then having to get up at a certain time of the hour, and all the other stories about maybe what kids would more likely say, but one of those questions could be as to where that really that why does it cost a lot of money just to get started as well as like for a certain amount of years? But on the other hand, that I guess the best answer, I guess if anybody can more likely say, is to where maybe the very good answer that maybe I could get is to where that it's like what you call it's a agreement. It's like if you want to call it like an agreement to where that if you are willing to go to school and get a good education, and then like reading through the paperwork, and then going through like we say talking to the persons there and the counselors or so at the school. It's basically like an agreement to where that you are agreeing to where that you are willing to show that you are willing to go back to school, attend their school, and then how much you can learn, and how well that how much progress you can show from what you learned, and as well as the important responsibility and knowing about for what you learned. So that's usually what I think. And anybody that may think about it is like for what they want. I'm like, really, that for like what if you change your major? But I know that may happen to some kids as to where that they attend school and they were into science. They want to get into science work, but then they decide to change their major and they decide to get into the health industry or so, or maybe into art industry. So you're like Warren to where that yeah that we may constantly keep changing our mind, and I know a lot of times anybody probably say is to where does that have anything to do with the brain right there, is to where whenever you constantly keep changing your mind. But on the other hand too, just the way the brain works though is that really that the basic requirement for what's need to become to attention is to where maybe for what we can handle too. But really, if there's a really the difference between what we want to do and what we can handle, huh? And I know anybody like Warren Tor that yeah, well, if you're trying, if you're talking, to talking to your brain, like you send own words, and I don't know anybody that may want to word it. Really, is there a difference between you and your brain? And like well, it's like word to where well, the brain's a part of me, but I'm just what you call it. If I get a good idea and then I think about it, is to where between me and my brain, and anybody that may you may have seen on those cartoon TV shows, is to where between you and the brain. That the brain is more likely telling you it's like for what they suggest. So it's kind of like I don't know if it's going back and forth or if it's going by a circle. and we can call it, like, say, by a circle. So the way the brain works, and as well as from how you understand about for what you're doing, especially. So that's just the way I think about it, is to where that really anybody that I want to where that why does it seem fair that you're paying a lot of money just to be able to help improve your own education? You're not really giving this education to somebody else until they are willing to buy that source of education or willing to hire you for any reason. But why is it that you're having to pay a certain amount of money just to help improve your education? And like with anybody that I guess any parents that may say is to where that that you maybe could explain why is that knowing about that this is willing about how much you're showing about how much you're willing to learn about what they teach. So just think about it, to where that it is expensive, but then on the other hand, that for willing about how well you're willing to improve your education is how well as you're willing to understand about what they teach as well. So I'm sure that anybody that may say is it going to take 7 years just to be able to see a difference? And they may say, no, it's not going to take 7 years. It's not going to take 7 days either. But what is it going to take? It's going to take is to where you follow the basic requirements. Is to where to participate, as well as understanding about for what you got to do, and then knowing about how well you're willing to learn the new skills. So I know, like with anybody, then the next question that they may have is to where you may have had some of these subjects in high school, but then they want you to take them again in college. Why do we think that could be the reason? And I may say that maybe for the next the next activity, but I know anybody that may warrant toward it, talk about for a higher education. There may be a number of reasons to why that we decide to go to college for any reason, and one of those would be is toward it. That are you ready? So a number of things that come to your mind when about for higher education. And whenever I think about this right here, is like with anybody's tour, that one of the things that I did mention also is that thinking about his tour, that you may have been used to seeing your name on maybe on a spelling test or any type of classwork, but then thinking about his tour, that you want to get your experience paying your own bill, especially if it's dental bill or doctor bill, or maybe anything that's related to medical insurance, or maybe a credit card payment or some kind. Well, anybody say, be my guest. So, anybody want to talk about multitasking, huh? Basically, multitasking basically means is to where you do a number of things within the amount of what you call 5 minutes or so. But like say for be my guest, and I know anybody wanting to where be my guest basically means really help yourself. So anybody that may want to where it's like, be my guest. If anybody were to mention that and wanting to, well, be my guest, help yourself. You think that you'll be able to handle it, no problem. Well, it's so really that on the other hand, that for any type of agreement as well, but showing about how much we are willing to work hard towards you improve our education. But anybody wanting towards something about what the president would say is about, think about is to where that you failed the test so many times to where it just seemed to where that what are you doing wrong? But anyway, but they have it talk about for higher education, like with anybody, that nowadays it seems like nowadays that we have a lot of access to all this stuff at home, to where it seems to where how is it possible that you failed the test? How is it possible that your education was not improved? Because we ought to know about the deposit as well as how much money we're putting down towards our higher education, especially if we got what you call our own cell phones, our own iPods as well, iPods, but our own laptops, our own computers, our own learning systems. We have access. I'm sure most of us have access to a lot of the stuff at home or wherever that we're going to school for, where you're able to spend at least maybe 10 to at least 10 hours a day or so on it, maybe at least 4 or maybe 5 hours a day on it, and Warren, to where to think about is to where you are pretty much paying for a lot of stuff. It may not seem like it, but then on the other hand, that I can guess I can maybe say is to where that as of right now, that there is no cost to you at this moment. But then on the other hand, but let's just say if you were paying for it and thinking necessarily to where that really that we may have heard that before, to where the choice is yours, is to where you come to school and you get a good education. But then on the other hand, that thinking about is to where that really that if there's something else besides the cost of it that's going to be important, and knowing about really about to show how much you know. So that's usually what I have to say, is to where anybody that may want to where a very good question, a very good answer to show about how much you're willing to learn something new, huh? But anyway, this right here would have been a picture right here, especially in my bedroom. Anybody that may want to, or that, yeah, you find a picture of you, and I know, like with anybody, that if anybody has seen this picture right here, that this would have been me right here. Whenever I was about, I would say about, yeah, I look about a year old or so. But I guess the point of the matter is to where that I didn't quite understand the whole purpose about college education. So anybody that may want to where it's all about just signing up for it. I'm like, no, no, there must be mistaken. I'm like that. There's a lot more to higher education compared to just sign up for it. Anybody that may want to where one that you had to be at least what you call 18 or older just to do it. On your hand, that knowing about it's like with the parents though. Anybody that may want to where really a lot of things that you have to be 18 or older just to be able to do. So you're like warren to where that the important purpose about higher education is that from my senior year that I kind of realized about how important it was, but didn't think about it, to where I only had about maybe half of a semester really to help improve my grades, and sometimes it didn't work. So anybody that may want to where, yeah, you try something and find out that really that people are only going to be able to take interest in what you do, mainly if it works. So you're like wanting to where really, if anything, anything that more likely works. And thinking necessarily to where that I know it back whenever I was young, that if I were to go home and think of a number of ideas and go into school the next day and wonder to where, hey, that I got an idea for what more likely it's going to help improve what you call for help improve my learning especially. So the one thing important to me also is that to where that really any of my ideas that I think that are useful. So that's just the way I think about it, is to where I want to go ahead and show how much I am willing to help improve my own skill. It's like knowing about really that you know if there's a difference which you call it's like really do you want to teach yourself the basic skills, or do you want to have somebody else teach you the basic skills? And I guess really what I want to do is I want to go ahead and teach myself the basic skills. So until I come to that what you call that next agenda, that next plan, is that the teaching myself. But basically wanting to where that you can't teach yourself because you don't know, as like a you don't quite understand about the basic requirements goes. But there are what you call like sources of requirements that you gotta go by. But anyway, but there you have it. But on your hand too is talk about for why we ask questions like based on higher education. But other than that, like thanks for watching, man. Me 25, and have a great